Oh, we're doing this? Wow, okay. Well, hey guys, sorry for the delay. I know it's been a long time. We both work and we do these videos as a sidekick, but we're almost done with the editing and we're about to post. I am just waiting on my brother. I think I hear him coming. What in the world is my brother driving today? Are you driving a German car?
Yes, I am. Don't you remember? We ended our video in 1915 when Nicola Romeo converted an airplane factory into a car factory, creating Alfa Romeo. And then in 1916, BMW was founded and they were making airplanes. And here's the logo to prove it. It's a propeller.
All right, welcome back to our Italian car history series. Last time we interrupted at the point where Alfa Romeo had just gone out of business and then it was saved and recreated by Nicola Romeo, right?
Right, and just as a quick advisory, it's still hot out, so I have to use this. Maybe you too.
Yeah. It really is hot, guys. It's no easy. We are in the garage. We wanted to be with this Alfa. This Alfa is just an amazing vehicle. If you've never driven one, you have to. It's an amazing car. But Alfa Romeo became Alfa Romeo exactly when Nicola Romeo reconverted an old factory that was making war components, and he restored the old name Alfa and combined with his last name. So Alfa Romeo in 1915 is officially born.
Right, and then a few years later, Alfa Romeo also begins racing, or rather, racing again.
Yeah, well, technically as Alfa Romeo, this is the first
yeah.
time that they race, but this is where the heritage of Alfa Romeo and their sportiness starts getting created. And they hired quite a few drivers, but there is one in particular that sticks out, right?
Oh yeah, his name was Enzo Ferrari, which a lot of you probably know, and we'll definitely be getting into him and what he created in the future of these videos, but as of right now, we're still sticking to the basic building blocks of everything.
That is correct. And unfortunately, Fiat, the Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino, has a problem. And you will see this problem starting to happen over and over and over. In this case, it's the government and the employees in the factory. They start protesting, and Giovanni Agnelli, the founder of Fiat, is kicked out of the factory, and the Communist Party, which was at that point at the government in Italy, takes over Fiat.
So they took over Fiat, but I mean, also at this time you have a big problem between communists and fascists, right? Did that have anything to do with the car companies?
Well, not yet, we can say. But obviously, the feud between communists and fascists, they're the two opposite spectrum of politics. It's starting to rage in Italy, and the ideas that they have, the two parties, are diametrally opposite from each other. So that is a problem. That is a problem because Fiat was all centered into speed and sportiness, and anytime that the government came into the picture, they forced Fiat to go into cheap and economic cars, and that will not make it easier. You will see it soon. I'd say let's skip to the next year, because in 1922, Lancia introduced something that 99% of cars today are.
It's basically Well, let me back up. Lancia basically introduced a car with a unibody chassis.
That is correct.
Everything is connected together.
Essentially, yes. Instead of having a frame under the car, like it used to be back in the days, they use the body of the car as the structural component of the car itself. All cars today, even this one, it's built on a unibody chassis. So that is why a lot of cars nowadays, if you get even in a minor accident, it's totaled. Yeah, simple as that.
So, also in 1922, weren't we just talking about fascists and communists?
Yes, and in fact the Communist Party is overthrown by their arch nemesis, the fascists. And guided by Benito Mussolini throws out all the leftists that took over the company and brings in again Giovanni Agnelli and says, please take back your company and make it great again. And wow, that sounded really actual.
Like
yeah.
Something familiar.
Well, the Mussolini assists the Agnelli family in building a new factory to build a lot of cars. Right now we are in a key moment. We are in 1922 and Ford is producing cars at a crazy rhythm. And Fiat has to compete with them and Mussolini doesn't want to be left behind. So he builds a factory for Fiat, and it is the iconic Lingotto. You probably don't know the Lingotto.
No.
It is a really tall building in the center of Torino, and the factory went from floor to floor, going up, until you reach the top floor. On the roof of the building, there was a test track where all vehicles were being tested, spinning around the track, testing for brakes and suspensions, and then they would bring them down and out to the market they go.
Was it like a NASCAR track?
Essentially, it was just an oval, but it was not just a NASCAR track. They had bumps on one side, and they had things to force the cars to swerve. Like it was done
like
right.
Street testing.
Yeah.
In a way.
So
then in 1923, Alfa Romeo creates a separate racing division, and what's that called?
Well, the separate racing division, it's called the Scuderia Ferrari. Actually, no. They created a separate division, and they use a new type of engine, which is the one with the hemispherical heads that we were talking about earlier. And Enzo Ferrari becomes the driver for this car.
Wasn't he also an engineer, though?
Yes, it was. And in fact, just a few years later, in 1925, that's when Enzo Ferrari is asked to stop racing. He was a good driver, he was not great, but he was a great engineer. And Alfa Romeo said, look, stop racing, we're going to name the racing team after you. 1925 is when Scuderia Ferrari is created, and Enzo Ferrari is the team manager. In his team, there is a name that is very famous, and it is Tazio Giorgio Nuvolari.
And he's the head driver.
He is the head driver, and is an historical point, and in fact, your car sits on the Giorgio platform.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we talk about that in a different video.
That's cool. So then, in 1926, 1 year later, Maserati wins the Targa Florio.
That is correct.
This race seems to be kind of important.
There is the Targa Florio and the Mille Miglia. They were two very prestigious races that they were doing in Italy, and Brother Alfieri is the one that wins. And here we start seeing the very bad choices that Fiat start making very soon. We're getting into some interesting stuff.
Okay, but there's first one thing I literally have never heard of, so I'm gonna let him explain it. What is this? Please explain it to the viewers.
And that's exactly what I was talking about. Engineer Elio 30. In 1931, invented something. It's the epicycloidal transmission, also known as the automatic transmission. Almost all cars in the United States utilize an epicycloidal transmission. And that's what engineer Elio Trenta had invented and patented for himself. But he had no way to build by himself. And in the same year, in 1931, Lancia, so we bring back another name, Lancia invented something that is used in every car today, the silent blocks. You see, up until now, engines were sitting directly on the car frame or chassis, in case of Lancia, and the whole car was shaking with it really badly.
So they essentially created this not only to stop vibrations, but also to limit noise?
Correct.
Or just vibrations?
But, well, vibration is noise
both,
in a way. And basically they set the engine on rubber blocks, which they are used in all cars today. Since then, they've been used in all cars.
Are they special rubber or what? Wouldn't it get
it's
too hot?
Caoutchouc, nothing special. It's just the way the engine can vibrate without shaking the rest of the car.
That's cool.
Yeah.
In the same year, talking about bad decisions, Fiat did something else too, or rather, something happened. What was that?
This is a fun story. So Benito Mussolini sees the Fiat is really pushing the technical advances, but he says, you guys need to make at least one car that is affordable to all Italians. And one of the ideas that pops up from the Italian engineers is to make a front-wheel drive car with the engine sitting at the front, which it's the cheapest way to make a vehicle, and in fact today a bunch of cars are like that, but back then were known. And so Giovanni Agnelli decides to split the engineering team in two, and one team is going to try to optimize the cars that they already have to try to see if they can make it cheaper, and the other team is going to concentrate on developing something new.
Why would this be a bad decision?
Well, back then it was kind of hard to do, but it was not impossible. The problem is that Mr. Giovanni Agnelli decided to go on a ride in this car with a front-wheel drive, and engineer Oreste Lardone was the one driving the car. They are together test driving this car with front-wheel traction, they are going through the gears, etc., and then the car suddenly catches on fire very violently. The two end up off the road, they stop in a ditch, they barely manage to get out. Mr. Agnelli manages to clear off his jacket and throw away whatever is burnt off. Then he looks Engineer Lardone and says, "You are fired."
Jeez.
Yes.
Pretty bad.
It's pretty bad because on that day, Giovanni Agnelli said, "We will never make a car with front-wheel traction, front-wheel drive ever again."
So what happened to the two divisions? It's just
That was the end of
one
it.
is terminated?
No,
and
the division that made the front-wheel drive is merged back with the other guys.
Right.
But that was a bad choice because technically Fiat, in this moment, they were on the brink of creating what has become the vast majority of cars that you see on the road today. Engine in the front, front-wheel drive, that is the cheapest way to do a car, technically. So that could have been the key to make it affordable, but they decided not to pursue that system.
So then we move on to 1933, where Alfa Romeo, despite all the victories that it had, which included which races?
Well, the Targa Florio and the Mille Miglia, if I remember correctly. Yeah, well, I think they did. They were winning lots of Mille Miglia back then. Yeah.
Cool. Well, despite those, the racing department was sucking the company dry, or his words.
Literally. I mean, racing
no
isn't
money
cheap.
left.
Yes. The racing isn't cheap. And the result is that Alfa Romeo asks help to the government, and Mussolini said Alfa Romeo is too glorious to not keep winning, so it will inject money from the government to help the factory keep racing, because the more you win, the more you look cool, and it makes the country look cool.
Maybe there's some logic there.
Yeah.
But was that racing division still held by Enzo Ferrari?
At this point, I believe so, yes. In this moment, it's still under Enzo Ferrari. It will be a few years later, their routes will separate. Instead, in 1934, I'll bring a name back, engineer Elio Trenta. The engineer that invented the automatic transmission is hired by Fiat. And they start testing cars with automatic transmission. We are in 1934, and it's not easy, especially in Italy where the cars are very small, with small engines. They're having difficulties, but the development is on.
So then in 1937, something happens. Kind of tragic, but happens, right?
Well, unfortunately, yes.
Vincenzo Lancia dies, and his wife and his son take over the company. Their names were Adele Lancia and Gianni Lancia.
That is correct. And in the same year, that's the year that Alfa Romeo makes a drastic decision. There is too many accidents happening in Scuderia Ferrari. A lot of drivers are dying. Alfa Romeo is starting to be a lot under the reflectors of the media, and they decided to discontinue Scuderia Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari is terminated, and in the termination agreement they say that he cannot develop a racing car for at least 10 years.
Right. So then in 1938, I'm gonna have to read this one, it's a long one.
It is.
Yeah. After many tests on Elio Trenta inventions, management decides that the epicycloidal automatic transmission is too inefficient and not worth developing.
Again, we have Fiat making a bad decision. They just threw away the front-wheel drive car. Exactly. Now they're throwing away the automatic transmission, and they sold it to Oldsmobile. They sold the patent to Oldsmobile, which was part of General Motors. And for what was said, it was even done at a rather cheap price. So, pretty bad.
But the crazy thing to me is that they said it would be inefficient. I would imagine it's heavier, but from an efficiency standpoint, being able to shift through gears and stuff much easier would make the car run better.
You would think so, but in reality, the epicycloidal transmission needs to utilize a torque converter, and the torque converter takes away about 20-30% of the torque developed by the engine. So it does damage the efficiency, at least in an epicycloidal transmission, not a dual clutch. We're talking about epicycloidal, which is the most common around. And on American cars where they have a big engine, you really don't care if you're losing 30% of your torque, because there is a lot of torque anyway. So, talking about torque and big engines, in the same year, in 1938, Maserati introduces a new engine to the racing world, and it's called the 8CTF.
What is that?
It's the 8-cylinder testa fissa, and everybody's going crazy because their car is so fast. There is just no point. Their CTF engine, it's so quick, and everybody's trying to grasp what are they hiding under the hood. And the Maserati engineers, they do everything to cover. Anytime that they're working on it, they cover it with blankets and stuff so nobody can see what's going on. It was nothing.
It was nothing? Well, then what was it?
It was two four-cylinder inline engines put close together, attached with the same head, from here 8CTF, testa fissa. So there was one head for two four-cylinder engines, but in reality they were just two four-cylinder engines. It was nothing special. what was making the car fast was something different.
Well, after just reading our unscripted script, I found out that the cars were actually more shaped in a cone manner, right?
In the tail.
In the tail. So, as you could imagine, aerodynamics start coming into the picture, and now things get a little bit more complicated because drag is being associated with speed and velocity and stuff.
Up until that point, nobody really paid much attention to drag, and now Maserati really is making the difference. And the next year, Bugatti starts pushing for a factory, for an actual factory, and this is where speed starts coming in the picture. But Bugatti decides to move their headquarters to Germany, in the city of Monsheim, and they do the Type 57. I hope I pronounced it correctly, guys. It's Molsheim. Molsheim. It's keep in mind we are in 1939. It is Germany still. Right now, Molsheim is located in France, and that's where the actual factory is created. And then what happens?
And then, sadly, Ettore son is killed while test driving a car they made.
That is correct. Unfortunately, there is so much media attention over the son being killed on the prototype that's the moment that pushes the family to go open the factory in Germany rather than Italy. At this point, you have Alfa Romeo that killed a lot of people with their cars. The media is pointing the reflectors on faster cars. Last thing you want is to start a car company that is centered in making fast cars there. And yet, 3 years later, Enzo Ferrari decides to convert a military supplying factory and create actual cars.
Yeah, he's a crazy guy. You just gotta love him. He does everything the way he wants. You know, he doesn't care what other people think.
And he starts the factory in Maranello, which is a fraction of the city of Modena. And in the same year, in 1943, during World War II, you have Fiat that was producing military vehicles, and Benito Mussolini is overthrown, and once again the communists take over Fiat. Once again, the factory falls in the hands of the government. Giovanni Agnelli is kicked out of the factory, and the Communist Party decides what to do with the cars, what to do with the factory.
Then, on a quick side note, my brother forgot to mention that Maserati also moved to Modena.
Yeah, that is correct. Maserati went to Modena as well. Yeah, same period.
Nothing special. They moved.
Yeah. So in 1945, Ferrari starts making a name for itself.
After they separated with Alfa, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point it's been several years. And they created the 125S, which is the first street Ferrari, and it featured a V12 engine. Fairly uncommon at the time in cars, honestly, but that's what they were going for.
But it had a V12.
V12, yes.
An awesome engine.
Yeah. Well,
although I don't know how awesome that one was, but the ones they make today are awesome.
Back in the days it was. I'm sure it was.
And then a couple years later, in 1947, Bugatti, who moved to Monsheim, that city now falls under French rule. So, yes. Which is why today, when a lot of people research why Bugatti, or where Bugatti is from, it says France.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And the following year, Enzo Ferrari finally his clause with Alfa Romeo expires, and he starts racing, and he gets the first win in a race around Lake Garda, which is the biggest lake in Italy.
Beautiful lake. And then in 1948, Lancia introduced to the market the first car with 5 gears. It's unheard of at the time, but that's cool.
Yeah, back then most cars had the 3 or at the most 4 gears.
And they had 3 or 4 gears for a long time, though. I mean, 5 is pretty.
Yeah, 5 was a lot, yeah.
For the time.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays you have 10. It's crazy.
Yeah, nowadays
it's just unnecessary, in my opinion. But
I'm gonna go for a quick mention. There is a guy by the name of Ferruccio Lamborghini, which makes tractors, and he decides to buy a Fiat Topolino. He modifies it pretty heavily, and he decides to go racing the Mille Miglia. But things don't end up too well for him.
after he lost control of his car and crashed into a restaurant.
That is correct. He crashed into a restaurant after 680 miles. So it was 1/3 of the way through the race. It didn't go that well.
More than 1/3.
And in 1949, so the very next year, Ferrari wins the 24-hour di Le Mans.
Right here is where we'll stop because now it's been a while.
Okay.
So we move on to the next part.
Yeah, that works. We'll see you
guys
soon.
in the next video.
Ciao.
Hey guys, please excuse us again. This video is longer than we expected, but please stay tuned because we're going to be back soon with more information and more cool cars.